What comes to mind first when you think about Dragon Ball? Screaming? Time travel bowl cuts? The fact that the president of Earth is a dog? Honestly, it's probably fighting, right? DBZ is the show for scream-punching enthusiasts, and a lot of millennials, like myself, grew up watching the show. For a lot of us, DBZ might have been our introduction to anime as a whole. So way back in 2002, when I was a wee boy of 12 years old, it blew my mind when I saw Dragon Ball Z Budokai, a fighting game based on Dragon Ball Z with fully 3D characters. I mean, I had played other Dragon Ball fighting games before by this point, like GT Final Bout and Ultimate Battle 22, but those games are bad. And also, for some reason, my friend growing up had a German version of Final Bout. I don't exactly remember why. But yeah, back in the day, a passable anime fighter was like God's gift to me. DBZ Budokai was released in 2002 for the PlayStation 2 and GameCube. The game was developed by Studio Dimps, who have a crazy big variety of titles under their belt, like the Sonic Advance series and a few titles in the Kirby series, along with a ton of licensed anime games. Budokai marked the first Dragon Ball video game release after a 5-year drought, which was actually a pretty big gap for the franchise. Yeah, the late 90s to early 2000s was a lull for the series. Video games weren't coming out, Z was long over, and the interest in GT was low from the start. Luckily for the Dragon Ball franchise, Budokai would go on to sell almost 3 million copies by 2007 worldwide, and at that time it was the 17th highest selling game for the PS2, a pretty big accomplishment for an anime fighting game on a console with thousands of releases, especially considering that Budokai released to pretty tepid reviews. When you first boot up Dragon Ball Z Budokai, you're greeted by a few key modes. You've got the self-explanatory practice mode, a 2-player duel mode, the world tournament ladder matches, and at the very top is story mode. Yes, it would not be a DBZ game if we didn't run through the anime's story from top to bottom, would it? To be fair, nowadays people complain that we've played the Dragon Ball storyline so many times that it's counted as a negative if a game doesn't have its own canon like Xenoverse. But back in 2002, it wasn't exactly run-of-the-mill to get something like this. Probably the best and most well-known example of this type of anime fighter storytelling are the Naruto Ultimate Ninja games. But Budokai came out a full year before the first Ultimate Ninja, so like I said, the gaming landscape was pretty sparse when it came to this sort of thing. You couldn't just throw a rock and hit an anime fighter, or look under that rock and find Jump Force, for that matter. As a kid, I really welcomed the Budokai story mode because it was an easy way to get some DBZ in my brain without catching the Toonami broadcast or digging out my self-recorded VHS tapes. And this is really giving the story mode a lot of credit because, let's be honest, it's pretty mediocre, and you could make the argument that it isn't even finished. The story mode takes the player through truncated versions of the Saiyan, Frieza, and Cell arcs, and then just sort of stops. Now, when I was 12, this didn't really bother me, and I think that's because Cartoon Network was literally airing the Buu saga on repeat for what seemed like 3 years. But looking back at it, I have to admit that cutting out everything after Cell is a lot of missing content. Oh, what I wouldn't give to see a Budokai 1 model of Super Saiyan 3 Goku. I don't think any official reason for leaving the Buu stuff out was ever given, but it does kind of make sense because the dub of that saga was just wrapping up that same year. Most people presume that they didn't include that content because Western audiences were not familiar with it. So the story content is split into 3 acts based upon the first 3 major sagas of Dragon Ball Z. Each act is split into chapters, which cover the various events, and each chapter usually consists of a couple of fights. And there's like one time where you have to play a minigame, and I'm not even being hyperbolic here, you have to rotate the analog stick to either keep Goku in range of Piccolo's special beam cannon, or you rotate the analog stick to charge up that attack. So it's really weird, not challenging or mentally engaging in any way, and I really don't understand why they made it. Other than that, you'll make your way through most of the major fights in each story arc, most often playing as Goku or a few of the other Z fighters. As I was making my way through the story, I kept feeling like they were skipping quite a lot of the major battles. Not having Vegeta fight Frieza on Namek is criminal to cut out of the story, and that was a little shocking in the moment. But then I remembered that this game has a funny way of presenting its additional content. After you run through the story and have completed all 3 acts, you'll notice that there are new chapters unlocked in each menu. These add in the missing battles from the story and have you playing as characters like Piccolo and Vegeta, and once you beat those, you will finally have the full story. Now, I hesitate to really call this additional content because it is literally just chapters cut out of the story mode. But hey, you can't play them until you see the credits roll. It's quite an odd way of unlocking pivotal moments in the story. It would be like if you were playing Halo 2 and you could only go back and play the Arbiter levels after you already beat the game once. Now, luckily, that is far from the only thing you'll unlock while playing through. One of the more fun additions is the inclusion of a few what-if scenarios that become available once all of the chapters are beaten. Personally, this is the kind of stuff I love from licensed games like this. Even if these chapters are pretty basic fights, the cutscenes are fun to see. The Saiyan Saga includes a mission where you play as Vegeta and kill the Z fighters, then resorting to asking Yajirobe for some reason to join forces with you. Then Vegeta gets pissed off that Yajirobe insults Nappa and goes Super Saiyan, and since you almost never see Saiyans with tails transform, that's pretty fun. The Frieza one is pretty boring, honestly. You just play as Frieza and kill Goku and then Piccolo and Gohan. Nothing special. The Cell Saga, on the other hand, whoo boy. Did you ever wonder what Cell might look like if he accidentally absorbed Krillin and got asthma? Well, now you can control that in a fight against a proportionally powerful Yamcha and Tien. My final form. Oh god, he has asthma.
For what he did to Krillin. I swear, if it's the last thing I do. He lost too much power. Yamcha, it's time to go.
Did Yamcha just fart? What was that?
I'm not gonna let some punk like you walk all over me!
Just wait till you get a taste of the legendary Wolf Fang's fist.
Damn, the final boss. Yamcha. The what-if nature of these missions is one of the most fun prospects that Budokai, and by extension all DBZ games, possess. I mean, they made an entire PSP game out of them. It's a shame that there are only a few of these missions, because some more content like this, and I think Budokai could be even more well remembered today. Once you've beaten all of the extra chapters, that is pretty much it for story content. However, there are plenty of other modes for the player to partake in, even in single player. Of course, there is the obligatory duel mode where you can compete against the computer or a friend, or watch the computer fight itself if you want, I guess. But the real side offering that most people will spend their time on is the World Tournament mode. World Tournament offers up 3 difficulties and has the player face an increasing amount of matches in order to claim the championship and prize money. While at first that just sounds like you have to fight a bunch of versus matches with no real difference from, say, the duel mode, it actually adds some mechanics to spice things up. The more interesting mechanic is the fact that all of these matches can be decided by ring out. Yes, even if you're flying above the arena, passing the invisible barrier causes a loss even if you don't hit the ground. It's pretty funny to think that Frieza came all the way to Earth just to lose on a technicality against Krillin. Oh my god! Fuck you, Gohan. Eat my ass. While this seems like a simple and obvious mechanic to add to a tournament mode, what it results in is basically a totally different game. Instead of the dance of blocking, grabbing, and powering up that you get from most of the matches, the tournament mode changes the game into a back and forth of charge attacks intended to fling your opponent through the barrier. The risk reward involved in baiting your enemy to the edge of the arena only to side dodge around them and win the round with one attack is a pretty fun way to play, and at the very least it adds a little variety to the regular fights. There is one final mode in Budokai. Once you've beaten the story mode and all of the extra content, you'll have one last thing that you can buy in the shop. Legend of Hercule is presented as the game's final challenge. I mean, it gets its own title screen, and it sees the player going through waves of fighters in an endurance match. Oh, and they can only play as the champion of the world himself, Hercule Satan. Playing as Hercule is usually a big handicap, as he's just a joke character, and the joke is that he's really weak. However, the character was endearing enough during the Cell games that he becomes a main character in the Buu saga and has stayed a recurring character throughout both Dragon Ball GT and Dragon Ball Super. Playing as Hercule in Budokai isn't as hard as you'd think. Most of his attacks do less damage than the other characters, but he still has some useful stuff. Plus, the animations for his supers are some of the best in the entire game. Ending a fight with his grab never gets old.
Have this!
So the difficulty of Legend of Hercule mode comes more from the fact that you have to survive 10 fights in a row with only 3 bars of health that doesn't regenerate. And one of those fights is against 5 Cell Juniors, so even on easy it's pretty difficult. Before each fight you do get some narration from Hercule, and that is basically the reward for this mode because beating it gives you nothing. So yeah, I didn't beat it because it's pretty hard. Honestly, I think the fact that Legend of Hercule mode doesn't reward you with anything is kind of weird because this game is obsessed with giving you shit. Most characters are unlocked by playing the story mode and defeating them in one of that mode's battles. Most of the time, anyway. Sometimes the game will just randomly give you Dodoria after a fight that has nothing to do with him, because it's fucking Dodoria, so who cares? If you're not unlocking a character at the end of a chapter, then you're being given capsules that contain special moves and abilities. These can be used to make custom versions of the characters, which are unfortunately locked to Duel and World Tournament. I would have liked to use some custom characters while replaying the story mode. That would have given the game some more replay value, but you just can't do that. The capsule system is honestly a little more in-depth than it needs to be, and the way that it is set up in the menus is pretty confusing at first. Not only can these capsules be supers like the Kamehameha and Spirit Bomb, but it can also be transformations like Super Saiyan or Fuse with Nail. Some skills can be set to your character multiple times in order to increase its power, and characters can only have so many capsules on their skill palette. Capsules can also contain passive skills that can take effect during a battle, which is a pretty nice way to spice up the two-player modes. The best example is probably the Heart Virus capsule that you get while playing the story mode. This activates at the start of a fight and constantly drains both players' health. Something like that can really change the way that you play duels or even World Tournament. This capsule system is really what gives this game legs, especially if you're playing with a friend and setting up custom characters. While you're given a fair amount just by playing through the story mode, 90% of them are just moves for Goku. So if you want to have fun with the other characters and their entire movesets, you need to get into grinding money to buy capsules in Mr. Popo's shop. Remember I said the World Tournament rewarded you with prize money? Well, the different difficulties give you increasing amounts of Zenny, which you then spend in the shop run by none other than Mr. Popo. There he is in all his racially charged glory. Yeah, this is before they tried their damnedest to make Mr. Popo not be an overt reference to a racial stereotype. I think they made him blue at one point, and there's a censored version of the manga where they removed his lips. I don't know if this is less offensive, but it is terrifying, and I don't want to look at it. So the shop allows you to take the Zenny from the World Tournament and use it to buy capsules. You can buy a random capsule from one of the 3 categories, or one that is Mr. Popo certified. The recommended shop item actually allows you to see what you're getting, and they reset pretty frequently, so it makes the most sense just to buy those instead of loot boxing it with the random pulls. Strangely enough, once you complete the requirements to unlock the extra modes, you actually have to go and buy them from the shop, which is kind of weird and something you just sort of have to stumble upon. All of this about the unlock system and the way you customize your moveset doesn't really matter if the gameplay isn't good. On that front, I'm pretty conflicted. There are some things to like here, but also a lot of stuff that is fixed by later entries in the series. Overall, Budokai 1 does feel pretty janky, and it was never something you were going to see at a fighting game tournament. I think the best way I can describe the way Budokai feels to play is mushy. It could just be my 20-year-old controller, of course, but this game sometimes feel like your button inputs are being emailed to the console. I think what causes this is the fact that you can input the combos faster than the animations, so sometimes it feels like you're queuing up actions. In a 2D fighter like Street Fighter, the animations are only a few frames, so you don't really have that problem, but in Budokai, a single kick might take a tenth to a half of a second, and by then I'm onto the second or third input. I did get used to this mushy input eventually, and changing up the control scheme actually helped a lot. Budokai does not use Street Fighter style quarter circle inputs to perform specials. Instead, you need to input a specific combo of attacks and end the chain with the energy attack button. Luckily, the entire combo doesn't have to land, and there were quite a few times in my playthrough where the AI would block most of my punches only to get smacked by the special anyway. While this way of doing things isn't the worst, it definitely feels strange to need to land a melee combo to fire off a Kamehameha. That's the sort of move that you want to do from a distance, and it makes sense that the later Budokai games changed those moves to directional inputs. Some of those combos are complicated too. There are basic ones that most characters have access to, usually just 4 punches and then the finisher, but then there are some unholy combinations that just make my eyes cross. And of course, I'm sure there are some stanky anime fighters out there that have combo lists that look like DDR inputs, but frankly, I'm too stupid to play those, so this is about the limit of complexity that I can remember. Plus, the PS2 controller D-pad is made of like rubber sandpaper, and after 45 minutes you might start developing a worrying callus. Budokai includes grabs, taunts, and transformations, and these are triggered by pressing multiple face buttons at the same time. That should be incredibly simple, but I could not, for the life of me, get these inputs to come out reliably. Luckily, this game actually allows you to completely remap the controls, and you can set these combos to the shoulder buttons like very simple macros. The shoulder buttons aren't used for anything anyway, so I don't really get why this isn't the default option. Hitting L2 to transform is way easier than hitting X, square, and triangle all at once. You also have a charge attack that is assigned to R1 that does fairly good damage if it connects and also sends your opponent flying. If both characters connect with a charge attack at the same time, you get this burst mode mechanic where you just sort of button mash. The person who button mashes the most wins, and the loser takes heavy damage and is knocked backwards. Not the deepest mechanic in the world, but at least it isn't literally just rock, paper, scissors. While the gameplay of DBZ Budokai isn't going to hold up to other games of that era, that are much more tight mechanically speaking, it is fun enough that you can enjoy killing a couple hours with a friend, once you get the feel of the controls down, that is. The Dragon Ball Z games of current day pretty much all use cel-shaded, or in the case of Dragon Ball Fighterz, rotoscoped animation. In fact, I think you'd be hard-pressed to name a 3D DBZ game that doesn't have some form of stylized shading that attempts to replicate the anime. Maybe Dragon Ball Sagas, but I literally just forgot about that game until right now when I'm filming this, so maybe better off not remembering that one. Budokai 1, however, well, this game just went for straight up 3D models, and the result is action figures smacking into each other. Now, to give them credit, this was the first DBZ game in 3D, and back in 2002, cel shading was not prevalent like it is today. It existed, of course. Parappa the Rappa is one notable example, and that came out in 1997, though that one is kind of like a fake cel shading. Plus, in the new millennium, games like Jet Set Radio and Fear Effect released that really proved that that style could be utilized in 3D action games. I think the game that would really bring that style into the public eye in a major way was The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, and it's funny to think that Wind Waker released in Japan only a month after Budokai. Honestly, I don't hate how Budokai 1 looks. I think it has a nostalgic charm, but I absolutely get why they never went back again. The closest is probably Jump Force, and that game looks scary. I don't like realistic Frieza. It really makes it very clear that he is naked. While I personally like a lot of the chunky models that this game has, I can't deny that some of them are really fucked up looking. Vegeta specifically, for some reason, his model always looks really funny, especially the big rectangle mouth. I think it's because Vegeta is constantly getting the shit kicked out of him in the cutscenes, so it just results in his model being in really funny looking positions. He's just a baby. Fucking Vegeta. Oh, Vegeta, poor guy. There are some other oddities with the models, like the fact that sometimes Raditz's hair will clip through his entire arm. It's especially noticeable on his alternate costume. Also, sometimes when you win as Piccolo, his antenna will just be spinning like crazy during his win screen. They're like the only thing in this game that has the illusion of physics, so it really sticks out. This channel does not condone doing anything to advance the death of your enemies and or people you do not like. That was a joke. Wow, look at them wiggly antennas. Thems are some wiggly ass antennas. I like those. They were like flinging in circles. That was some meat spin action right there. I will say the music in this game is absolutely great. However, it has found itself mired in controversy, as the composer, Kenji Yamamoto, was accused of plagiarization on a lot of his Dragon Ball work. As a result of these accusations, the Dragon Ball Kai soundtrack was completely redone, and the HD remaster of Budokai 1 and 3 either removed or replaced all of the tracks. While it is a shame because these songs sound really good, I can see why they did it. I cannot unhear Black Sabbath whenever Frieza walks onto the screen.
So, Vegeta, can you feel your bones crushing under the weight of my power?
I think you dangerously underestimate your opponent. Obviously. Looks like I'm going to have to give you a quick lesson.
Can you stop playing Ozzy Osbourne in the background, though?
You'll see who's left standing.
The game is completely dubbed in English, which sounds silly to mention now, but back then it wasn't rare for a licensed game to have Japanese voice lines. All the voices sound good too.
That's right. So watch carefully while I wipe that horrible smile off that ugly face.
There is a little weirdness, like the fact that Cell always has his raspy first form voice, no matter if you transform or not. Perfect Cell is voice acted fine in the cutscenes, so I'm assuming that they just couldn't change his voice mid-battle because of technological limitations. The only other complaints I really have are nitpicks, like, why is the Kamehameha yellow? Perfect Cell has a blue Kamehameha for some reason, but not Goku? What's up with that? Finally, my ultimate criticism of this game is the fact that so many of the animations are reused. A lot of characters have seemingly unique moves that just end up being the exact same animation that everyone else has. Everyone has at least one actual unique animation, and some of those are pretty damn elaborate, but it's always a disappointment when you pull off a move and it's the same thing you've seen 100 times. Not to mention, most characters also have identical combo animations, so you're kind of seeing the same punch-kick combos used by pretty much every character. There are some notable exceptions, but it's kind of shocking how many of the combos are reused. Playing through Dragon Ball Z Budokai was definitely a nostalgic trip. I used to play this game a lot as a kid, along with Time Splitters 2, Super Smash Bros. Melee, and War of the Monsters. Budokai was a disc that was on heavy rotation throughout the summers of my childhood. I had forgotten about some of the oddities of this release, like the sort of roundabout way of unlocking extra content and the Zenny grind to equip customized fighters. While the game is sometimes frustrating for someone like me who doesn't really play fighting games all that much, the experience was absolutely worth checking out once more. While I never really put much time into Budokai 2, and 3 was a game I only played occasionally, Budokai 1 left me with enough good memories to respect the series forever. So what do you think of the original Budokai? It is certainly a relic of the PlayStation 2 and a game that younger generations probably have no real reason to play, but it seems like a shame to not remember it. Should I take a look at Budokai 2 and 3? Let me know below, and if you'd like to throw a suggestion for other gaming retrospectives in the comments, I would really appreciate it. I would like to do more gaming reviews in 2024 and beyond, so hearing from you guys directly will definitely push me in the right direction in that regard. Thank you for watching today's video, and I will see you again soon. Hello everyone, welcome to today's end card. I hope you enjoyed a video about a video game. If you did, please let me know below, because I like it when people like my stuff, as one does. Okay, let's thank the channel members, aka Batosai, Brian, Sanchez, D. Mills, Daniel Johnson, Deader V, Dillasol 22, Gert, Joe Castellanos, Joe Cavazos, John Lamb, Johnny G, Canto 20, McLean Nugent, Mr. Smash, Zappa Slave, Video Gamer 75, Trey Hardy, Sindustries, and Harmonious. Thank you all very much for being members on the channel. It does mean a lot, as I always say, that you guys are willing to throw me a couple of bucks just because you like the videos that I make so much. It's very flattering. Thank you. So next up, I think I'm going to announce what the next video is. I'm going to be doing a full video on Metal Armor Dragonar. I think it will probably be out in 2 weeks. I think it's going to be 2 weeks between this video and that one. I have already started working on it, but it's a long one because it's like a 48 episode series. So yeah, Metal Armor Dragonar, that one will be good. And then after that, we've got what's that one called? Gundam Reconquista in G. And then after Reconquista in G, either at the end of April or in the middle of May, we're going to have officially the first Zoids retrospective video. People have been asking me to look at Zoids for a long time, and now I'm gonna, so that's good. Anyway, thank you again. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any suggestions for other games that I should look at, let me know below. Should I look at, Budokai 1 or 2 and 3? Should I look at the Tenkaichi games? I don't know. I need your guidance. So thank you all very much, and I will see you again soon.